Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 177. So welcome to 2024. This is the third podcast of 2024, and we are aware that we are picking up new listeners and new watchers every week. So we just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for following us. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. And obviously, thank you to lots of you who have been with us since the very start. And it's now obviously well over 3 years now that we've been doing this podcast. And if you are listening on the day of release, which I know many of you are, because we did confuse some of you a few weeks back with our Boxing Day release. It put some of you off. I know, not off. Put some of you not. It didn't put you off. It didn't.
We've had letters.
We've had letters. We've had complaints. No. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, I missed that one because I don't normally come out." Yeah, so we did do a Boxing Day one a few weeks, but we are now back on the every Friday. We will be releasing a podcast throughout 2024. And if you are listening on the day of release, it is January the 19th. So, like we said, it's the third podcast of 2024. So, Mr. Peter Lant, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, trying to keep dry.
Okay.
I've just been out walking the dog, looking at the. I did everywhere is just soaked at the minute, so I did a river tour because, like, obviously the River Avon runs right through Bath, and Avon means river as well, doesn't it? So it's the river. But anyway, and it's just flooded like everywhere. I mean, there's lots of floodplains for it to go into and stuff, so it hasn't flooded the town, obviously. But so we took a walk along it yesterday, just like looking at all the places. It's bonkers. He loved it though because he likes to swim. And
it is. I know we do try to keep up the what I don't even know the word I would use, but we are. This is the first time we are actually catching up since Christmas and New Year, Pete. Even though we're 3
weeks. It is. Yes.
Happy New Year. So happy New Year. Yeah. So you were away obviously over Christmas and New Year, and you did lots of walking and training and things I saw. But like you said, it was very, very wet.
I didn't do so much walking.
No,
because it was horrible. It was proper. The cottage we were staying in didn't have any heating in it, and a stone floor, so it was freezing cold. And if anything got wet, you just it was like being in a tent. You know, when you just if things get wet, you can't dry them. It was like that.
But you did have the Die Hard 1, 2, and 3 box set.
We had, right? We watched because I couldn't find Die Hard on the channels on the things that I've got, but we found Die Hard 2 because I think it had been on telly. So we watched that before we went away, and then when we got there, we found like they had the box set of 1, 2, and 3. So we watched 1 and 3, and they had a load of Bond films as well, which was great. So we watched. We watched Goldfinger on Christmas Day.
Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Brilliant. That sounds like a proper...
How about you anyway? How was your Christmas, James?
Yeah, it was good. It was very, very busy because I had people off work. So I was working solidly through Christmas and New Year, but it was really good. It was lovely to see members training right the way over Christmas and New Year. And we opened on Boxing Day for a couple of hours, and I had a good group of people in, and opened on New Year's Day for a couple of hours. So no, it's been very, very good. And now, but what is good about not having a break is you don't have to get back into the routine after the break, because I've just kind of been working straight through. So kind of January's rolled in really nicely. So no, we're going well. Anyway, guys, today we have a guest with us. We've got a very special guest who I've wanted to line up on the podcast for a while, and we are talking to her today. Now, her name is Pav. Is it Johal?
Yes.
Yeah, Pav Johal. Just wanted to check the pronunciation. So Pav has been the way I know Pav is she's done the Tactical Strength Challenge at Unique Results lots of times now. I mean, I'd imagine it's at least maybe half a dozen times, something around that, about 4 to 6, something like that, around that number of times. She's a member of Base Gym in Bracknell. She is a level 3 personal trainer. She is also a competitive power lifter, and she also runs something called the Strong Mum Project. And we're going to get to know Pav, and it's great because I've kind of seen through social media and through seeing Pav over a number of years now, a kind of development of her as an athlete, and also as a, I suppose as a fitness professional, and as someone in the industry, and someone who's really kind of testing themselves and putting themselves out there and training and progressing at a pretty rapid rate. So we're really looking forward to talking to Pav today and finding out all about her. So welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, Pav. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, and Happy New Year. I'm really well. I'm excited to be on the podcast. Yeah, not
Good. And we've we've like I say we've known each other for a little while, but like many of the guests we have on, I kind of know from meeting and passing and courses or events and things like that, but very rare you actually get to sit down with someone for an hour and really find out about them and their background and their training and kind of what health, fitness, strength means to them and how it kind of shows up in their life. So I suppose really what would be really good to begin with is just to find out a little bit about for us and for the listeners, to find out a bit about yourself, a bit about your background, a bit about your life, and a bit about how, you know, training has become part of your life, or when it became part of your life and throughout your life and to now. And we can maybe just dip in and ask questions as we go, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I'm Pav. I'm a mum, so I've got two young kids. I've got a 9-year-old, he'll be 9 next week, and a 6-year-old daughter. I'm also a finance business partner, so I'm full time now at the moment, and I run my PT business as well. And I'm a power lifter, very consistent with my training, and that's a bit about me. Like, I've got a cat, a maidenhead. But in terms of my fitness journey, I think that's quite an interesting story. And I'm going to go right from the beginning, how it started. So I've come from a very fitness obsessed household. My brothers were Olympic freestyle wrestlers. My younger brother was extremely good at it and represented Great Britain and did really well. And that was pretty much his life from 9 to 19. But it was all our lives. So my dad he was very strict with our food, our nutrition, sort of, you know, our fitness as well. Obviously, I'm Indian. So even though I started off sort of wrestling with them, I never sort of, you know, when I was 10, in a couple of years, my dad was like, right, it's not for you. You're a female. It's quite a male dominated sport, you know, all the contact side of things. So I kind of wasn't allowed to participate. So I was there supporting them from sort of the sideline. And then I became more academic. So for me, I just went into my studies, focused on that, but still had the nutrition side of things. And then really, I went to university because the way we ate at home was so strict, and it was, you know, just healthy foods. We weren't really allowed fizzy drinks. There was no sweets, treats. It was very, you know, come home from school and it was like just loads of fruit. The weekend was, you know, starting Saturdays with fresh homemade juice. When I actually went to uni and lived out, it was the first time I had this like freedom to eat whatever I wanted to. And I actually went really crazy. My habits just flipped. It was like, you know, I went through binge eating because I think I was so deprived. I used to have 6 Kipling cakes a day. There was no water in my life. It was all takeaways and sweets and junk food. And when I came home from uni after the first year, the reception I got about my physical change was quite harsh. I was basically told, being sort of being Indian in background, and this is sort of 20 years ago, my mom basically was like, no one's going to marry you, you know, because of your size. This is how my fitness journey started. But it wasn't even me, because I was quite happy with my size and how I felt. You know, it came from my mum. So she would wake me up ridiculously early every day over this summer holidays periods at home and make me go to the park and just walk. And I was actually really unfit. Like, I would get out of breath walking up the stairs at home. And so it started off with that. It basically started off with me walking around this park. I couldn't run. And then I'd come home and do some like leg exercises or stomach exercises that I'd like seen in a magazine from Hollett and Barrett, and, you know, would replicate in the living room. But I think over the summer I lost some weight, and then I went back to uni, and because I'd lost the weight, I got a lot of, oh, you look great. And that felt amazing. Like, you know, people noticed. And because that felt really good, I kind of carried on with this weight loss journey. And I signed up to a 5K. I trained for that. I lost loads of weight. And basically, I lost 3 stones. It took me 3 years, but I lost 3 stones. So it's quite a significant change, really. But I fell in love with running. So 9 years ago, I had my son. So before my son, I was basically a runner. I did marathons, half marathons. I was part of a running club. Everything I did was running. There was some strength training, but it was very different to what I do now. I wouldn't say I was it came from a healthy place. It was very much aesthetics. It was about looking skinny. I had real anxiety if I missed sessions. I remember losing sleep because I didn't go to the gym, and I woke up as early as I could to get to the gym. I was weighing myself twice a day. I was dieting. I was cutting out all those stereotypical things you hear women talk about. I was doing that because all I wanted to do was be a certain way. And I was so scared of getting big again. I couldn't really see what I looked like because I just had this image of myself being much bigger.
So
And
just
then
quickly, Tab, sorry, just for the American listeners. So 3 stone is about 42 pounds. And you're a fairly small sort of lady, aren't you, Pav? How tall are you? 5'4", 5'5", 5'5", yeah. So 42 pounds, to come off of someone's frame that size is quite a sizable amount of weight, isn't it? Like you say. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that because I know that people that stones is something a bit unique over here, and people don't really get it.
For our American audience, we'll do it in, I don't know, like bags of bananas or something like that.
Yeah. How many bananas?
Yeah. So you were in this cycle, I suppose, of weighing yourself, running, afraid of putting weight back on, wanting to be skinny. And we say that as kind of, it was all about being small and being skinny rather than obviously things are different now. But yeah, carry on with where you're at.
So I think I fell pregnant with my son, and I really struggled. I struggled from the moment I conceived to my size, my body changing. I remember sending messages to my friends going, I'm so fat, I'm so this, a time I should enjoy. But I was so obsessed with my size. And I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that. And then basically after having my son, 13 days after having him, I went straight back into running. I was out there, and he's January, so it was freezing cold. But I also then developed asthma. So somehow in my pregnancy, I got asthma. So my running has never gone back to where it was, and I've given up on that now. But I remember, I think I had this moment of change because I was really harsh. The way I spoke about myself, my body, and how I looked was awful. And I was driving somewhere, and I was listening to LBC radio back then. And I remember this guy speaking, and it was about eating disorders. What was going on in the radio at that time on LBC. I just remember this adult man coming on and just saying that he has eating disorders, but it's because his mum would diet. His mum dieted all his life, so he had these eating disorders because of her. And I remember just something in my brain switching and just thinking, oh my God, I can't carry on the way I'm going because my kids are going to pick up my insecurities, my issues, the way I cut out carbs, or how I'm obsessively weighing myself, or how I'm overtraining. And it just, from that moment, I was just like, I need to eat that garlic bread at meal times. I mean, this is when he was tiny and a baby, but that's when I thought I need to change the way I am, because I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling, but I definitely don't want to be the reason why my children are going through that. And at that same time, I had come across CrossFit gym in Maidenhead that was doing baby classes, and obviously it was all inside. So I started going to them with my son, and obviously getting involved with sort of the CrossFit style training, and he was in a safe space as well, and absolutely fell in love with CrossFit. And that was the first time ever that I've come across that sort of strength training, and that sort of training in that space, because before that it was very much light weights in a gym, and focus was cardio, HIIT training. And I then signed up to CrossFit. Originally, it was to do this 12-week transformation to lose weight, because I was like, right, I want my body back. But when I started going to these classes, I was just amazed at how no one cared about what size or shape you were. It was all about the weight on the bar. And it was just so amazing. It was the first time I've ever been in that sort of environment as well, because I think in that global gym environment the girls I was around, it was all about size and weight and skinny. And then I'm in this CrossFit space, and all my sort of years before that, 10 to 15 years of training before that, I've never been in this environment. And it was so refreshing, and everyone was eating carbs, and it was all about fueling your training. And I did CrossFit up until COVID, really. And that's where I think the change out of cardio to strength to fueling myself really came from. But since then, training with obviously Gareth and Mark at Base Gym, it's changed massively again, because I've really come out even out of the CrossFit space now, and it is focusing on strength training. But my whole ethos and how I look at things and how I train my clients, it comes from a healthy space. So my nutrition, my training, it's not from that unhealthy space from my running days. It's much more focused on, I'm going to eat optimally to fuel my training. So yeah, it might not include certain things, but that's because it doesn't fit in with what I want to achieve. And I talk about longevity, and I want to be able to, like, I'm 40 now. I've still got young kids. My kids are young. I'm active with them. I want to carry on, running with them, playing with them, and also being a role model for them. Like, they are always, as soon as they see something on TV, they're like, "Mummy, how much weight is that? How much weight are they lifting?" And then they go, do you lift that much? Like, they go through this like thing of, do you lift that much? And I was like, I'm probably, in their head, I'm like the strongest woman ever. But it's and being Indian as well, it's very different, because there's not many women. Well, I go to competitions and I'm usually the only Indian female there competing. And so I think the reason why I do post a lot, and the reason I do that, is for representation, to show sort of other females that that we should be out there training as well. Weight training is important for all women. It's something everyone should be doing. But I do think, being Indian and sort of South Asian, a lot of women don't have anyone else to look to. They don't have those examples, that sort of someone sharing that knowledge as well. And that's why I like to showcase as much as I can to help, like, Indian women like me.
I suppose there's a couple of things that are just from what you've said so far that kind of come to mind. A couple of questions. I suppose the realization that you had, where you could potentially pass your issues or hang-ups or whatever you want to call it around weight and body image and all the rest of it onto your children, it is massive. And the fact that probably from what you said, initially some of that, because your mum obviously had kind of said stuff to you when you were little, when you were young, which kind of then had an effect on you, didn't it? So it kind of came from, you've got an appreciation of that kind of generational, the way that can work. And I was actually going to ask about the kind of the cultural background as well, but it sounds like that, like you said, you were kind of involved in exercise and training really by proxy because of your brothers, because they were the wrestlers. And you were a little girl kind of getting involved in it. But then, like you say, when you got to a certain age, it was like, well, actually, this isn't appropriate for a girl of your age in this culture to be doing. So you're going to stop that. And then you became more academic and all the rest of it. So that's so interesting. One question, you said about at home, it was always very healthy eating. And was that targeted towards because of what your brothers were doing and because they were in a sport that was very physically demanding and involved kind of making weight categories and weight classes and that sort of thing? So that wasn't necessarily a kind of an Indian cultural thing with the healthy eating. That was more a byproduct of the focus on performance for your brothers. Is that right? Or
Yeah, that is. I think my dad's always been quite unique. Like, when I speak to other, like, my friends now, they're obviously, their upbringing is very different. But my dad, out of his brothers, has always been the one that, so when he came to this country, he started wrestling and playing kabaddi with his friends. And I think that was his, he's moved into a different country, and that was his way of socializing, meeting people and making friends. And he's always been into fitness. It's like incredible, actually. And he's always been into healthy eating. So obviously he just naturally passed it on to us. And I'm really grateful, because I think food-wise, I'm extremely disciplined. But I think that's because, I've grown up with such good habits, even though I had a little blip. And, it started from a very young age. But I'm a bit like with my kids, I'm not as strict because I saw what that strictness did to me. So I've taken the learnings and then taken some of the things that haven't worked for me, and I've adapted it for the kids as well.
I think it's funny that what you said, like when you went from that to going to university, and then it's like, and then the wheels just come off because you're like, oh, all of a sudden I've got this freedom that I never had. I think that's kind of because I was talking to one of my guys the other day, and he's wanting to lose some weight and that. He's like, so I'm going to cut out bread, and I was like, do you like bread? And he's like, well, yeah. And I was like, well, don't cut it out then, because like you're just going to crave it, aren't you? But I think the other thing that you said was about kind of, because I think a lot about influence, the influence of kind of your family, and then the influence you're going to have over your kids, which you're mindful of, so you don't want to bring that in. But then you also said about the influence of like the gym that you were a member of. All the girls were skinny and lycra and all that sort of stuff. Whereas I suppose in base gym, it's probably not like that, right? Because it's it's more of a like an independent type of place. So I think that's where, like, I don't know, people can come unstuck, can't they? Because they'll go into a certain place and go, right, that's what I need to look like because everyone else looks like that. And it's like, look, you know, just pick a genre, whatever you want, pick a training style, and then just go for it, you know, and don't care what anyone else looks like. And that's why when you said about the CrossFit place, nobody cared. It was just, you know, be yourself. I think that's amazing. But obviously we can say that sitting here because we've all been through very similar stuff to you, I think, of like, I want to do this. So if I do that, I should look like that, or I should be doing this. And it's like, no, just find your own way and then go with it. I think that's amazing.
So in terms of CrossFit and how that sort of varies to base, so we'll give base gym is based in base gym is based in Bracknell, is that right? Yeah,
It is, yeah.
So base is in Bracknell. Base gym is based in Bracknell, and you'll remember there obviously, and we give a shout out to Gareth Doody and Mark Hassel, who are the kind of the head coaches and the owners there. So when did you first join that? You mentioned that was that kind of coming out of the lockdowns and that sort of thing or around that time?
Yeah.
Base, yeah.
So I've previously, so the CrossFit gym I was at, Dudes owned it for a little while, or a few years actually, and that's where I came across Dudes. And basically, the reason I have pull-ups is because of Gareth. I remember him sort of 2018, and everyone put their goals up, and mine was I want 5 pull-ups, and he like wrote a plan for everyone, and I just followed it like it was religion. It did it like 3-4 times a week. I did it for months. And then I tested my pull-ups and I had them. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like, it's so easy. Like, I did these 4 exercises and I've got it. And at that point I thought, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Like he knows what he's talking about. It's incredible. And that was in my mindset where I learned, I think something tweaked about having a coach and trusting the process. And so when we went into lockdown, Gareth basically started base online, and I signed up to that. And he did a number of cycles because obviously we were in lockdown for a while. And then coming out of sort of the first lockdown, he announced he was opening this gym in Bracknell, and I moved straight over, basically, and I've been there since it was opened. So I live in Maidenhead. It's about half an hour journey, and there's a few of us that go to that gym. But it is now I'm at a stage where in my training, I go there because of the coaching, because of the program, because I know as coaches, they really care about their members. And, I have goals. So I sort of remember one Christmas party, he was going, dudes, I just want to do really well. I want a podium at something. And still then I was doing sort of CrossFit comps. And he was like, leave it with me. And a few months later, he came back. He's like, I think you should do this powerlifting comp. It'd be really good. No, actually, the first thing was tactical strength. He came across tactical strength and he went, Pav, this is brilliant. It's got strict pull-ups and it's got deadlifts. And they're my 2 favorite things. And he's like, you should do it. And that was it. I was like, yeah. And then obviously the powerlifting came off the back of that. And, at the moment, I'm back to doing the base method, which is sort of similar. And it's sort of functional fitness. So we do strength and strength balance and then tiny bit of conditioning. But what I like about the training program, there's structure, there's progression, it's measurable, and it's injury free. So something with CrossFit that I used to feel like loved CrossFit. I think I wouldn't be where I was if I hadn't done CrossFit, but I was forever sore. like everything hurt. And you'd go into training session after training session, and the quality of your movement was obviously dipping by the end of the week because you were just in bits from that intensity. Whereas with the training I do now, and as I get older, I'm more mindful about how my body reacts and resting and, not overdoing it. It fits perfectly with my lifestyle. It also, it doesn't, I'm not overtired. So I'm not grumpy in the day. It means I can be a good mum as well, because I'm not snapping at the kids because I'm absolutely in bits. And I can see progression. So I'm moving the way I want to move, and I'm getting stronger. And for me at the moment, that's my goal.
So can we maybe just talk about powerlifting for a little bit, because it's a phrase that people would have heard. Most of the listeners on the podcast here are kind of going to be 40 plus. They're not some obviously trainers and people involved in training, but obviously people hear phrases like bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, high rocks, which we might talk about, CrossFit. There's all these kind of names that are out there. So powerlifting as a sport, what does that involve?
So powerlifting it's 3 movements. So you've got the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. And it's basically getting the max you can. You get 3 attempts with each lift. And your total is your best, like highest score with each of those lifts. But there are rules. So with your squat, you have to hit depth. Obviously there's commands you have to follow. Again, with bench, there's a pause at the chest. And with deadlift, you just have to show control of the bar. So I think, you can say, oh, it's these 3, and people have these images of them doing it at the gym, but it's very different because of the rules. And yeah, the rules around them, and those standards, that you have to reach, which I love, because that's why it's a sport, because of these rules and standards, and you've got referees watching that you hit depth. So you can't half-heartedly do the movements. You have to commit fully, which is quite scary actually. If you think about a heavy squat, you're going down, you don't know if you're going to come back up. But I think
what's interesting, because you compete, I think, do you still compete in like the under 63 kilos?
Yeah.
So I mean, so that's 100 and what's that, 130 pounds or something for Americans. That's and like you said, sort of 5'5", 63 kilos, but you're lifting some big weights across. So with the winner, if you like, of the meet, it's done on the total, isn't it?
Yes.
So and then the total within your class. So you'll be within
Yes.
within a weight category, within a class, and then you have podiums and stuff within each category. So what's your, so people have got kind of an idea, what's your best at the moment in competition, squat, bench, and deadlift, just so people know?
So in competition, my squat is 125 and a half. My bench is 60, and my deadlift is 150.
Yes, that's all in kilos. Yeah, so sort of times 2.2 for pounds. Yeah, so yeah, no, that's incredible. And like you say, there's specific standards, stipulations, ways you have to do that, and it's quite good because I see quite a lot. There's a bit of a kind of a base sort of powerlifting team, isn't there, now, that you go out to competitions, and quite a few of you kind of compete now, don't you?
Yeah, that is quite nice. We've been to some local comps, and we're kind of the largest team now at some of the local ones. And it's really cool. It's really nice to have others to train with. We kind of joke that there's a powerlifting corner in the base gym. But yeah, it's, and I love, like, I just think it's the one thing I love about base and gyms like that. It's just sometimes you're training, but it's nice to set yourself a goal. Be that high rocks, be that tactical strength, be that powerlifting, just so to put some focus behind your training. So my whole fitness journey, there's always been focus. So when I first started running, I'd sign up to races, and it kind of became this. That's where it all started. That was my way of every day getting out for a run or going to the gym, because I was like, I've got this event, and that followed through into CrossFit, and it's followed into powerlifting. Obviously, I don't think I need that anymore to train. I just love training. It's part of my life. It's ingrained in me now. But I love competing. I just, for me, going to a competition and standing on a platform and doing my thing, I just love it. For me, it's showtime. And base gym know that I thrive off competition, and not saying that I'm competitive, but I love testing myself. I've got this thing about physically, we can achieve so much more than what we think. And that's what I love going out when I've done marathons as well. And I just love putting my body through this because I know it's going to respond. And I like that feeling.
So what's we had Alison Young on a couple of weeks ago, who you know from the Tactical Strength Challenge, yeah. So and one of the things she said was the importance of competition, or not even competition, but the importance of training for an event. You know, that there's a date in the diary that you're, you know, that event's going to happen on that date, and you're going to do it whether you're ready or not. And one of the things she said was that you may never feel ready, but you can always be prepared, you know, because you always get to these things thinking, oh, if I just done that slightly differently, or do I feel 100%? Could something have been better? But you get there, and no matter how you feel on the day, you've got to perform. You've got to step up and do your very best on the day. So I think that's huge. And we had Sean Cairns on as well a while ago, and he again was saying the importance of having an athletic outlet, or a competitive outlet, or a competitive focus for your training, or training for a goal, you know, training for something more specific than just training. So would you say then that is powerlifting at the moment your kind of, is that your main focus, your main sport? That's kind of, if you had to say this is what I do, you'd say I'm a powerlifter.
Yes, yeah, it is. Right now, I'm a powerlifter. My journey from runner to CrossFit to powerlifter. So I'm very much, this is what I'm doing now, but I don't know in 5 years' time what I might change to. I think that's the beauty of fitness. There's so much out there, and there's so much to choose from, and it's so adaptable. I've had to change because I went from runner when I had all this time to having kids to getting older, and finding powerlifting just works for me now. But yeah, I'm a powerlifter, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Just talk to us a little bit about high rocks that you did before we came on. You said you've done it once, and
I've done it once.
It sounded like it might. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it sounded like I've done it once. I'm not necessarily going to do it again. But how did that come about? And was that part of a team? And you know, how did you find that whole training for that event, and then that whole thing?
So I did it as a pairs. I did it as a double female pair with another with Magdalena from Base Gym, and I can't remember how it came back. So I think a few people started doing high rocks at Base, and I got FOMO, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give it a go. So I signed up. I'm gonna be honest, I was having so much anxiety about the running because I don't really like conditioning anymore. I pulled out. So I sort of said to Magda and dudes, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't have time for training. So Magdalene was like, no problem. There was someone else at the gym who wanted to actually Mark wanted to take my space. So she went off, and I thought, it's all done. It's fine. And they came back, and dudes came back to me. He's like, look, we can't change it to a mixed pairs. There's no more spaces, and there's no one else at the gym who you know can do it. And I think there was like 3 weeks left. And I was just like, I can't let her down. This is really bad. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I hadn't trained. I did 5K, and I signed up for it. It wasn't as bad as I had expected. It was, she was like, my partner was brilliant. Magdalena was brilliant. She got me through it. But I remember like she kept going, are you okay? And I had to keep saying yes. I was like, my calves were hurting. I was just, you know, the running, and all the movements were actually okay. And we finished it, and we were like, oh, this is brilliant. And we signed up for another one. However, we had signed up, but this powerlifting comp came up, and Magdalena is a powerlifter as well. So we decided to sell our tickets and go for powerlifting, and we've never signed up for high rocks again. So I've got it. I've got the pictures. I know what it's about. That's it.
Oh dear me, because that's something that, like we say, we speak to, haven't we, Pete? We mentioned, I think it was before we started recording that we mentioned we've just spoke to Pete, probably half a dozen people over the last year, of more and more people. We keep hearing about high rocks, you know, when we talk to people, and it's becoming more. It's certainly becoming more and more popular, and it's more.
Yeah.
It's kind of it seems to me to be very accessible, you know what I mean? Because there's different ways you can do it. You can do it as a team, you can do it as a pair, you can do it as an individual, and it's kind of seems to me that it seems it seems a lot more accessible than something like CrossFit, for example, or running a marathon or doing like a big. I suppose triathlons are quite accessible, but it seems to attract a lot of people anyway. It seems to be very popular at the moment. Yeah,
Very popular at a base gym
yeah,
at the moment. Yeah, we get loads of members going and taking part, and they love it. And
yeah.
and I can see why. It is accessible, and you can do all those movements.
Mm.
So when you break it down, actually, you can run, you can do the skier, you can do the rower, the walk. So there's nothing there sort of stopping you. Whereas CrossFit, with the pull-ups, some of the skill work, the cleans, the technical stuff, I think it's you have to put in the effort to learn the skills, but it's a lot of work to
I was
be
going to
at some
say
of those
actually
levels.
with High Rocks, the actual the level the movements they've picked are quite they're quite like low sort of skill acquisition, aren't they? They're things
Yeah.
like the wall ball and farmers walks, walking with a pair of kettlebells, walking lunges, pushing a sled. You know what I mean? And in some ways it's probably quite smart because you're not gonna, when you're heavily fatigued, and you are obviously, if you keep running these 1Ks and then coming back and doing a strength exercise, when you're fatigued, that's when injuries are going to happen, isn't it? So to have kind of like a slower a lower kind of skill requirement, means hopefully that less injuries happen. No, that's really
Have you guys signed up yet?
no.
It sounds like my idea of hell. I like lifting weights in the morning and then going for a nice walk. That's how I get my distance in the cardio.
Yeah, no, it doesn't float my boat, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it for people, for people who do. It's a good, and like I say, I think for anybody just to have something to train for, whether it be the local 5K, a charity cycle ride, a sprint triathlon, whatever it is, to have some focus for your training, I think is the most important thing. So when did you then, Pav, you're kind of, this is you training for yourself. When did you decide that, right, okay, I'm really interested in helping others and coaching and becoming like a level 3 personal trainer, and passing on some of your enthusiasm and experience to others? When did that kind of happen?
That actually happened in lockdown, so it's not been that long. I think it's always been sort of there that I've wanted to do this, but obviously I was just a bit scared as well, and like sort of, and then the investment, the studying, doing the qualification. But during lockdown, I started posting like my training, because like everyone, you were just training, so I was putting things up on my Instagram page, and I remember someone going, "You should open up a public page." So that's where the Strong Mum project page actually started, my Instagram page. And then I was furloughed. So I was furloughed, and when I got furloughed, I thought, oh gosh, what if they don't want me back? What do I do? And I've got a finance background, and I basically took the plunge then and signed up to a PT course and started doing my qualification. It took a while because then I came out of furlough very quickly, so I was studying and working and managing the kids. And got that all sort of signed up. I was qualified in March 2021, so it's not been that long, actually. But what I found was I had, like, through just my following, so a lot of my clients are coming through my Instagram page, and I coach a lot of Indian women, and I think that was it. It became this thing that when I started showing what I did, I realized how little of that is out there. And being a mum, sort of young kids and job, it's like, wow, how do you manage it? And I started then sharing, actually, how do I manage it? Because I've got tried and tested methods of how I manage the gym, my nutrition, life and training. And it's just those little things, isn't it? Like having some yogurt, some like protein yogurt, or these little things just to help people. Meal prep, like I never leave the house without a snack. People like packing their children's snacks, and I'm packing my snacks because you know what it's like when you're out of the house and you suddenly get hungry. So I've learned how
that
to.
reminds me of the gone fishing thing with Bob Mortimer when he's always got pocket meat on him.
I always have, yeah. I never go anywhere without food.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's got really busy. Like, sort of, I started taking on clients. I've since then really adapted and changed the way I work. I've learnt loads, as you do when you start your own business. You start off with one vision, but over time it changes, doesn't it? So over the last 6 months, I've changed my business model quite a bit, and it seems to be working. And I've obviously adapted. Like, when I probably started the Strong Mom Project, I thought everyone was like me. Like, they were into fitness, and and I've obviously trained clients, and I've realized how different it is, and I've become more empathetic, and I've tweaked my methods, and I've, understand not everyone is like me, and it's starting off much simpler, and, at home as well. But I'm really enjoying it. I find it so fulfilling. Like, I get messages all the time, and I just love the fact that I can share my knowledge and help other women. And it's just so, like, also in the Indian culture, Asian culture, not everyone's so forthcoming. So, I share, I probably overshare, because I'm just like, it's helped me, and I hope it can help someone else. And I just, yeah, I love it.
So do you find things, it's funny, I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to one of our members the other day who was, they were somewhere, and they were saying about, and they saw these like women's only gyms and things. And I know that in London, there's quite a few, like, for, Asian women and different religions
Yeah.
and things who don't want to train in front of men and, all the rest of it. So with the clients that you have, like you say, you're probably speaking to and tapping into a demographic that, other people won't reach, because you are setting an example yourself from your own culture and things. Do most of the people you coach, do they train at home? Do they train in, public sort of gyms? Do they train in women's only gyms? What's the way that you coach people?
A lot of my clients train at home. They have equipment at home.
Mm.
It's only a handful that go to the gym, and that's more so to do with time. They've got so much on their plates, that they just don't have that time to go to the gym, or maybe comfort. Like, it's scary going to gyms, especially these global gyms, where you have to go in and, fight for the equipment and set up things. And if you're learning movements at the same time, it must, it's really daunting, isn't it? You kind of don't know where to go and shy away and things. It's funny, because I started my fitness journey in a women's only gym. I used to go to the gym, and they had a women's only room, and I'd just go in that room. And it was like, Indian, Pakistani women, so I grew up in Slough, and so I just remember being in this women's only gym all the time. And obviously we'd never go into the men's weight area, because that was just scary. But yeah, a lot of my clients are working out from home.
So I suppose that's the thing. We again, when we speak to people like yourself who, very confident, very accomplished, very, love, like you say, love training, feel comfortable in a gym and doing what you do. And I think probably it's difficult for us to kind of sometimes shift our perspective. But for many women, probably the thought of going to a like you say, a big kind of gym that's maybe more male dominated, especially if you're new to exercise, you don't know what you're doing, you're not confident in there, it's, you're trying this for the first time, it probably is a very, very daunting prospect, isn't it? So which is why I think it's great that we try and speak to lots of women on this podcast who are role models and who are inspiring for other women, and for men as well. But it's kind of, if it's just men on here talking the whole time, it's kind of becomes a bit, men talking to men. Whereas we have so many women on here now, including yourself, who all come from different backgrounds, all come from different kind of, I suppose, sporting or competitive backgrounds. We've had skiers on and powerlifters and strong women and, all different kind of people. And I think it's great. And I think it is changing now. I mean, do you think it's changing? And I think CrossFit's had a big part to play in that. The view of women's strength training and being involved in a gym is now no longer just about, like you say, being skinny and being light and being small. Is that changing?
I think it is massively changing, but I think the shift with the sort of South Asian culture is probably around perimenopause and
Mm,
menopause and those conversations, because a lot of my clients are sort of in those in their 40s, 40 pluses, and they've heard that strength training is really important for them, and how it will help and bone density and all these things. For them, it's coming from that longevity and health perspective. Um, but I think, yeah, CrossFit has been just amazing for women in general. But I think also you've got the perimenopause, menopause talks that are going on, and it's so, we hear so much more about that. And with that, the importance of strength training.
mm. And I think that's where people maybe more seek out. They wouldn't necessarily think that, well, I'll just go down to my local leisure centre, or I'll go to the big box Globo gym. It's more like I'll seek out either, someone like yourself who, you know, is a similar age to them, looks like them, is maybe from the same culture as well, and has experience and is inspiring, or goes to somewhere like Base Gym, which is a smaller community where you're going to get more attention, more help, more hands-on, kind of more coaching, as it were. Yeah, the fitness industry. I mean, you it sounds to me like you've seen it from all angles, really, or from lots of different angles throughout your career, yeah, and throughout your life, yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I've tried and tested quite a lot of things: nutrition, fitness, fad. I went through a spinning phase as well. I've done the spinning, the aerobic classes, done it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. No. I mean, how are you? I mean, I know, Pete, you kind of tend to work predominantly more with men in your group, don't you? In your group, but the guys that come to you, are they more? They're not the kind of guys who maybe would just strut into the local Virgin Active or whatever and rock up and pay for a membership because they realise they need a bit more help. Is that fairly accurate?
Don't know if it's about help. They're just kind of they're just not that type of person. They're just like, I don't want to go to a gym, but I don't know what else to do. So they might go for a run or cycling or whatever, which is nothing wrong with, obviously. But it's like, so I just basically a similar sort of thing, mid-40s into the 50s. It's like, your bone density starts to go down. You start sarcopenia, all of that sort of stuff. Just longevity. It's the way to do it. One of my ex-clients, actually, I found out on Sunday I found out, actually, he was 67, I think. He hasn't been it wasn't my fault. He hasn't been for,
Yeah.
for 5 or 6 years. But I think it was his birthday 3 days after, but he died on Saturday. And I don't know why. I just saw it pop up on Facebook, and that brought it home of like, this is why I do what I do. And a similar thing with you, Pav, like, you get people in their 40s, and then they can, by the time they get to the 60s, 70s and what have you, then it changes everything. So that was just another thing that brought it home. So yeah, the guys who come along to me is more like, yeah, they're not gonna, it's not that they're afraid or anything like that. They're just like, I'm just gonna go and not use it, or turn up and not know what I'm doing. So they're more like, we'll just come along, have a bit of fun. Everyone's very similar. And it works very well in that environment. But I haven't got loads and loads of clients as well. That's the thing. So it's just really nice.
Mm.
I've got online people who are very different as well, who do like strength training and stuff like that. More kind of formally, I'd say, more programmed. Whereas the guys who turn up, it's still programmed, but it's more. There's a bit of like an element of fun in it as well. Shall we
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Even
They seem-
though you find powerlifting fun, which most people would find really boring, wouldn't they? But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you get the results,
I always
it's
say, because I'm really analytical, like I think Gareth and Mark get really, because I can be really like, I'll watch my videos and be like, but that's not depth. And I'll be like, oh, but look, they're like, it's fine. And, my numbers, but I'm a finance business partner. Like I analyze numbers all day long. So of course I'm going to analyze my performance to like as far as I can go. But I just love the fact there's something to track for me. And there's that, I can see progression. And that's the person I am. I know it's not. I know it's not for everyone. I know some people fear having that goal, and it gives them anxiety, and it's too much for them, overwhelming to train for something. So you have to think about. I think as an individual, you need to figure out what works for you, and then go with that. For me, having an event, having a competition is my go-to. If I get so I've got nothing in my calendar till June, and I'm working really hard not to get twitchy and book something because I need, I'm trusting the process. I'm trusting Gareth. He's going to put me back on powerlifting in a few weeks. And I will follow it. But yeah, it's that two-way thing as well, isn't it? Trusting your coach, trusting the process. And it's such a evolution as well, because this wasn't me 2 years ago at all.
Yeah.
So how do you, because that's interesting, that the trust thing, because there's a guy who I train online who was pressing a 28 kilo bell, but he was just starting to look a bit tired. So I was like, right, let's take it all the way back down to 20 kilos and we'll just cycle on the way back up. And he must have been having a bad day, because he was like, what? We're going to go all the way back. I'm falling off the wagon and I haven't been as consistent as I wanted to be, and all this. And I was like, look, man, it's not a regression. We're building back up again. And when you get back to where you are now, you will be stronger, because he's had his mum's been ill and she's had to be put in a home, and he's selling her house, and he's got 2 kids, and he's got a job, and he travels with that and all of this. And this had been happening then Christmas, and he's got sheep and all of this stuff. Right. And I was like, all of this is going on in your life, and you're doing heavy training as well. So you can't do all of that. So let's drop this back down until all of that, like in the summer, all that'll drop back down. So then we'll be built back up by then. And he did that was 2 weeks ago, and he did one session in the couple of days later on the not the new, it's the same program, but just regressed slightly. And he was like, oh, thank God you did that. That's why that felt really nice. So how do you gain, what we're talking about, the trust? How do you gain the trust of people? Because obviously mums will come to you and be like, right, and you've proved it, when you introduced yourself and said, I'm a mum of 2, I'm a power lifter, I'm a partner in a business, and I'm setting up my PT business as well, and I do powerlifting competitions and all of it. It was like, right, okay, how many hours are there in a week? You know what I mean? So obviously mums will be looking at you to say, well, how do you fit all of that in? So where do you start?
Well, I'm so organized.
Yeah.
But where do I start? Is this back to gaining trust from my clients? Or
Yeah,
how do
if
I
someone
manage
comes to you and says, I'll not be able to do that, what's the...
Yeah, so when I take on any new clients, I speak to them about their lifestyle. I'm literally like, what does your day look like? What does your week look like? Realistic conversations. What can you actually do? So my planning, my programming is very bespoke to each client. So I can only take on certain number of clients, because it's crazy, because I'm giving everyone a different plan. But that's what I want to do, because my business is what wasn't there for me after having the kids. So very much is tailored around giving other women what I wish was there for me. So I will sit down with my clients and I'll be like, right, how many times a week can you work out? Is that 2, 3, or 4? And then how long? Is that 30 minutes, 45, or an hour? And they'll tell me. So it's like, right. And it's like, okay, what equipment do you have? And I'll plan their programs around what they tell me they can achieve. Some are brilliant, and some need more hand holding. And for those who need more hand holding, it's a case of, on the weekend when I do my client check-ins, it's just going, when are you going to train? What days are you going to actually train? Put it in your calendar, tell me, so I can hold them accountable. It's working through, and also being there, sort of going, I'm here, so speak to me. If you start feeling like you're falling off the wagon, or you're feeling any sort of, oh my God, this is too much, I'm overwhelmed. I had loads of clients message me on Monday about starting back up. I kind of break it down for them. I'm quite empathetic and put things in real life. You have to give yourself time to transform, and nothing's going to happen in a week, 2 weeks, quickly. And you have to do it from a place of kindness, because as women, we beat ourselves up so much. And then it's these every other week or weekly check-ins with them. How are things going? What worked? What doesn't work? And tweaking them. And I think the trust I gain is because I'm conversing with them. I'm listening to them. I'm listening to their life. It isn't generic. I'm not being dismissive of their problems. The reason I say that is because after having my children, I have had coaches where I came back to training when Neve was 6 weeks old. Obviously, I was breastfeeding, sleepless nights. I came to the gym a few minutes late once. I'm there every day. I've never been late. And I got told off by this coach. And it really upset me because I thought, you should see that I'm here. I just felt like you should see I'm here every day. The fact that this is a one-off and is out of character, you shouldn't snap at me. And then he later on apologized, but I remember just how I felt about it. It just didn't make me feel good. And it's like, I've got all these things going on as a new mum. Like, why can't you understand? And that's the coach I am. I try to understand my clients' lives.
I think what you just said there, Pav, is massive, because that's like the fitness world in general is largely ran by men. And
where are your priorities?
Where are your priorities? It's largely ran by men. It's probably, and we know, because like I say, we actively try and speak to lots of women for this podcast, but 70% of the podcasts are with men and 30% are probably with female guests, because it's not a 50-50 industry. Probably 90% of fitness professionals are men and 10% are women, around that, I'm guessing, but that's just from, and it's just, I just knew you were going to say that when you said it was a guy who's like, has got no empathy for what you've gone through, and just actually to get yourself in the gym, how much that took, and then just to tell you off for being late is I
often, it's funny, I often find it, because I have similar conversations with people. The people who are training in person, it's 3 sessions a week, and there's a number of, it's it's not like an open gym. I do it outside, but there's 12 sessions a week, and they pick 3, and some will only come twice or whatever, and that's fine. But people online is quite funny, because I have similar conversations to you. What's your lifestyle like? What does it look like? How many sessions do you think you can do a week? And they'll be like, like 6. And I'm like, no, you can't. Give yourself a chance. We'll start out with like 3. And see what happens, and like inevitably you'll get 2 done, and like, I didn't make it this week because of whatever. And I'm like, right, you see, so if you just set up 6, you'd be failing in your own head drastically. So let's give you a win from the very start, and then if it works out that they can do 4 or 5 or whatever, that's like the very initial thing, isn't it? I always tell people this as well. It's a discovery process. You don't know me, I don't know you. We're going to get to know each other over the next couple of months. And then after that, it'll hit a flow, and it'll just be like, here's your program, you'll do it, and that's it. And the biggest thing I get is people who just disappear. And it's like, I'm here, I'm your coach, I'm here for you to ask, I didn't want to tell you because I'd fallen off the wagon. It's like, that's the whole point.
That's what you need to tell me. It's funny, my clients are the other way. They, like, I think being female as well, they're like, I'm going to start with just 2 sessions. And I'm like, okay, we'll do 2 sessions for a few weeks. I go, but then I really will push you to more, because what I see, and it's interesting for me, and that's the bit I've like adapted to, is I push myself. I'm all about, like, I'm always the one who picks the weight too heavy at the gym. Dudes will be RPE 7 and I'm going RPE like 12. And, I'm always trying to go heavier. And so it's such a contrast to me when I get these women who are like, only 2, and, no, we can't. And it's like, you have to, I've pushed my body to extremes. I will try to go further than I am capable of pretty much all the time. And that's where I'm learning to actually doing less and resting, and like managing the RPE better will help me. But this is the other way. Like, these females are scared of actually pushing themselves into discomfort and actually lifting that little bit heavier weight. There's fear of injury all the time. And it's like, how do you know you're going to get injured? You've not tried any of this, but it's obviously ingrained in them, where, you do too much exercise, you do too much strength training, and something bad's going to happen. You're going to hurt yourself, or you're not going to be able to function. And it's completely the other way. You get stronger, your core gets stronger, and everything else, your whole life improves, really.
This is great. This has been such an interesting conversation, and it's true, and I think it's probably still, especially if you say, you're dealing mainly potentially with women in their 40s, and there's probably that they've not been brought up and grown up around the kind of the strength training culture, or with strength training in their life. There probably still is that lag from the, women do cardio and yoga and men do weightlifting. So there's probably we're in that kind of transition period culturally, where it's still very much, women do yoga and cardio, men lift weights, and we like we say, it's improving, and certainly, the people we speak to on this podcast and people like yourself are making it better. But I think within the general population, there's probably still that kind of that nagging kind of thing that's still from the 1980s and the 1990s, and we're kind of gradually, in 20 years time, probably it will be totally different again, but we're kind of in a transition period, I think, within the fitness industry and the strength industry. But no, it's been
I would also say it's a great time to get into it for women, because if there's like powerlifting or something like that, if there's not many women doing it, you've got more chance of winning, haven't you?
I mean, that's the aim, really.
20 years time, when everyone's doing it, you'll be like, God, this is hard, isn't it? It's just like getting now.
Powerlifting has become extremely popular, really popular over the last few years. I missed out.
Yeah, because it seems to me, like powerlifting is almost like what triathlon was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? It's kind of almost, we go in waves, don't we, in cycles within fitness and training. And yeah, powerlifting is very popular now. It's certainly, but I think it's great, because certainly I'll again, another kind of shout out to yourself and to Base. It's the guys that come down to do the TSC and the guys that I see go into the powerlifting competitions. It's very accessible. You're all different shapes and sizes, aren't you? And it's very inclusive, and everyone's kind of doing the best they can. But you are very much a team and a squad going to do these comps. So I think it's brilliant. So yeah, I mean, we've got another. I think the next TSC is May the 4th. So maybe we'll have some of your guys from Base down again. I will reach out as well to Gareth and Mark about getting them to come on and maybe do a podcast together, because I've been meaning to get them on for a while as well. So
yourself for the Star Wars jokes.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that.
God, man,
May the 4th. Yeah.
Like a bunch of analytical people lifting weights who are all geeks on Star Wars and Marvel. It's good.
Maybe it has to be fancy dress or something.
Yeah. And I was going to say as well, Pav, the way you described your love of kind of numbers and programming and precision and analytics, you won't have listened to it yet, because it came out last week, but it's not been released yet. The podcast we did with Fabio Zonin, the last one, is called Patience and Strength, and he's someone who's been lifting for 40 years, and he's got records for the whole of those 40 years. And he talks about programming and strength in last week's episode in a way that I think you'll really appreciate, in terms of his detail around programming. So yeah, try and have a listen to that one if you can. And we haven't really talked in much depth. Maybe we'll have to get you back on in the future to talk more about the Strong Mum project. But if people do want to kind of find out more about you and follow you, and just see what you're up to, and be opened up to the kind of services you're offering and things, what's the best way for people to do that?
So it is through Instagram, and it is at the Strong Mum Project, my handle. Yeah, just follow me, and if you've got any questions, send me a DM. I love having questions. I love helping women. So, feel free, if there's anything you see that you want to know more about, just ask me.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pav. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And like we say, we definitely do it again in the future, because that's a lovely conversation. And lots of avenues we didn't go down that we could have gone down that we will do. Pete, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up?
No, I've just followed you on it. I followed you on Instagram when we started recording. And as you were talking there, I was just watching one of the videos, and it was like, wow. It was like a montage of everything. It was like blimey.
Was that the 2023 kind of one?
Probably, yeah. There was a bit on. It looked like you were on Penny Fan or something like that as well, and some mountain. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, I love that, because that's just up the road from me, so I love it. It's great. Go there all the time. But yeah, no, this has been great, because it's one of those. These are the podcasts that resonate, because we get lots of people on who kind of. We've had world champions at this and that, and like lots of kind of, I don't know what you'd say, but you're a real person, if you know what I mean. James, you talk about this a lot, don't you, James? And this really resonates more with like with a lot of our listeners, because they're kind of like, well, how do I get into this? How do I do it? I'm a mum. How do I start it? How do I become like you? And your journey is like, well, I wasn't always like this, or I've transitioned through, and you've done the journey for those people, haven't you? And you're like, right, well, if you need a hand, I'm the person to come and ask. So that's brilliant. So I love that. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening, everybody. Quick little reminder that we have in April this year, Dan John and Tim Anderson coming over to Unique Results in Chelmsford for a weekend. There are still a few places left on that weekend. Both Pete and I will be there, so you can come and meet us in person. Pete's looking a bit, yeah, give away. So both Pete and I will be there, along with Dan John and Tim Anderson, who are probably far more appealing. They will be there as well. But that's April the 13th and 14th at Unique Results in Chelmsford. I'll be posting out lots. You can go, if you're on Instagram, you can go to the link tree on there, and you can find how to buy tickets there. Next week, we will be joined for, I think it'll be his 4th podcast with us, Mr. Paul McElroy.
I've set aside like 3 or 4 hours for that one.
Well, he's actually only been on 3 times, but one of the episodes, no, he's been on twice, but one of the episodes we had to chop in half because he was on for about 2 hours, wasn't he?
It was 2
so
and
we've
a half
done,
hours.
yeah. So we've done, so it'll be his 4th visit, Mr. Paul McElroy. And then we've got Ellie Crawley on.
Ellie Crawley's coming on,
Ellie Crawley from Bristol. And then we've also got Mac McLaren, Tartan Warrior from Scotland, coming on. He will be with us as well. So we've got some really great guests lined up over the next few weeks. And like I say, and I will arrange to get Gareth Doody and Mark Hassel on from Base Gym as well. And thank you so much, Pav. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. And hopefully we may see you in May at TSC or at some stage in the future. And I'm sure we'll get you on again. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. Please do find us on YouTube and subscribe on there, because we're trying to up our subscribers on YouTube. And we will be back next week for episode 178 with Mr. Paul McElroy. Until then, see you later. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favourite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.